Thank you very much. And what can I say? I think the three colleagues that were before myself just really inspired me to actually think, should I actually be dropping corporate world and actually doing something? So for now, I think my story is going to be about that sort of combination of what happens when you try to climb the corporate ladder and when your personal circumstances come into place, and what do you find in that corporate environment that sometimes you try to figure it out, and how do you go about it? So that's my story of today, and I want to believe that I truly believe on defining moments, and I truly believe that when a defining moment comes along, either you define it or the moment defines you. And I think that when you really look at what has happened to myself and the choices that either I made to either define that moment, create the opportunity, or create the path and the seeds to get into where I wanted to be, or those moments that happened to me unexpectedly that sort of turned around the way I saw the world, the way I thought about career, diversity, and ultimately my personal life. So I'm from Spain. So I'm part of a family that very, very traditional, very Catholic, part of our Spanish culture. I was supposed to have one path from a career perspective. My family, all part of sort of, in a way, life science, so all part of hospitals, and sort of working in that environment. And I was supposed to actually be that person too. And I was supposed to work in a local hospital in my city and actually having my life very settled and sort of conform with what my family tradition was. So just as a context, my father, 8 brothers and sisters, all of them, lots of very big family, and all of them in one particular part of a path. So after actually trying myself repeatedly, I actually studied psychology. And I studied psychology, and I was always had this intuition about what happens with human behaviors, what happens with people, what's in their heads. So the first actually part of psychology, the first part of my journey as a psychologist was actually in psychiatric hospitals and in forensic psychology. So it was a very, very difficult work, because what you do is that you see in many aspects how people are completely challenged from a psychological perspective. And you try to help and you try to do your best. And sort of you go through it. The forensics part of psychology was actually really interesting, and is really supporting judge in court when you need to do an assessment about the psychological sort of reliability of different individuals. So that was a world as well that sort of influenced me very early on, but there was something missing all the time. What was missing? It was missing the global aspect of it. It was missing the diversity of my environment. It was missing the ability to be able to communicate in different languages. But that was not what my parents wanted me to do. So after trying and trying and trying, so imagine Sunday dinners, all the family together. You're supposed to have a very harmonic way of doing it after going to church every Sunday morning, and just like, hey, Mom, Dad, I think I want to leave the country. And they were like, no, like what a girl alone is going to do out there. That was all what I received all the time. No, the world out there is not actually, it's very dangerous. And we're talking probably 20, 25 years ago. So no, it's very dangerous. What a girl, no, you've got everything. You have this. No, it doesn't fit right. So I was doing my master's around university times after university, and I keep on trying every Sunday, and every Sunday was a family drama. Every Sunday was a family drama, up to the point that they were telling me, just stop creating this noise in the family. You are breaking the harmony. So that pushing the boundaries is something that very early on I've tried, and you test and so on, up to a point where I said, you know what, this is not working. So I need to do something different. I knew the most important thing, one of the most important things for my family, for my parents, was education. having a career, having a master's degrees. And it's all about conceptions that your family has, is the environment that you live in, right? So you want your kid to go to university, the traditional path that we all know. Now, I knew that I had to trade something with them in order for me to do what I wanted to do. So secretly, I basically trade my spot in university in another university outside of Spain. And I traded to the point that it was no way back. So I had to go that Sunday and say, I'm leaving. And it was chaos. Well, you're leaving. No, you're not leaving. I am leaving. Because if I don't leave tomorrow, which, by the way, I have a flight to Paris. So I trade my university spot with a French university. If I don't leave, I will miss 1 year. I will miss my degrees. I will miss all what you want me to do. So I left. So the next day I left. And guess what? My dad come out of the room with a luggage. I'm going with you. So my dad came with me. Here we go. Put me on a residential hall. So we landed in France. We took the train. Put me on the residential hall where I was supposed to study for that year. He saw everything was okay, fine. Here we go. And next day he came back and flew back. And that's sort of how I started to really break the mold, break the boundaries. So it was for me to just at some point to say, that's it. But it created a lot of family disruption, huge family disruption. So things like, why are you doing that to your mother? Right? Why are you doing that to me? Why are you doing this to the unity of the family? You are the black sheep. But so I heard all of that. But look, at the end of the day, that disruption created the opportunity for me to I left, and I actually never looked back, and I never went back, by the way. So I've been out of Spain, actually, living abroad through my career for basically the last 15, 16 years. So now the interesting piece of this is that thanks to that disruption that I created, my parents saw the world thanks to myself visiting me. They never left Spain before. I was the first generation in the family to actually leave the country. And they actually never saw anything but Spain. And thanks to my career through one of the big companies, they actually start seeing the world. So they traveled to Brussels. They traveled to Russia, which I lived in Russia. They traveled to Brazil. They traveled to China. They traveled to Italy, thanks to myself and because I was working in those destinations. So in a way, they got enriched and they actually ended up thanking myself for that experience and for testing those boundaries. But at the moment, it was hard. So this is another one where a defining moment that happened to me. This one I didn't choose it. So I worked most of my career for a very big American conglomerate, and in that, which we believe in talent, we believe in leadership development, we believe in some of the conversations from a career perspective. What do you see yourself in 5 years? So we believe in that, and I believe in that because that's sort of, that's my way to change things from within. But something happened to me in that experience that I was part of one of the acceleration programs for the company, and I was basically posed to Russia CIS. So I actually loved the country, and when I arrived in Russia CIS, the people were very welcoming. At the same time, I got so many questions, so many things telling me, you know what? Lots of people have come here. They don't last more than 5 months. It's like, more than 5 months. Okay, why? Well, it's very hard. It's really hard. And obviously, needless to say, what is happening at the moment is heartbreaking, especially me having lived there and being actually the the HR leader for the entire Russia and CIS countries. So it's very deep to my heart, everything that I see at the moment, because I have friends from that moment. Because I arrived there and I saw a really opportunity to grow and to do something different and to really immerse yourself in a huge different culture. right? Which again, my boundary was, I actually want to see the world. That was my bug, right? I want to speak another language. Now something happened in Russia. So after everybody saying, well, this is super challenging, something happened. So day 2 of being in Russia, working late, corporate role, leaving 11 p.m. in an office. I was at that time 25 years old. So here we go, I'm there. And I left the office and I took a taxi. And I knew that I didn't speak a word. And I knew that basically the journey from the apartment I was in to the office was very straightforward. It was just one street. So it was just from there to my office and my office back. One street, straightforward. I took a taxi 11 p.m. It was already like, oh my God, 11 p.m. alone here. What's going to happen? So I took a taxi and I entered into the taxi. I joined the taxi and I obviously didn't know how to even give directions about where do I have to go or things like that. So I always knew from the previous day that I took it that the taxi would just pick me in the entrance, way back, and drop me literally 10 minutes from the office. Now, bear in mind, it's minus 45 degrees, so you couldn't walk, right? So 10 minutes ride, you needed the taxi. So I took the taxi, I entered in the taxi, and the taxi actually started riding in the opposite direction. So opposite direction, driving, 10, 15, 20 minutes. And I'm like, what is going on? So I tried to basically tell the taxi, just the other way, like the other way. The taxi driver just literally was talking. I didn't know even what he was saying. So then I'm like, okay, what happened? So then I decided, well, I need to do something. I was into the dark, 11 p.m. I didn't even know where I was heading. 11 p.m. into the dark, and I was like, well, I need to do something. So I decided to grab basically the steering wheel and sort of the car and sort of said like, no, you need to turn around because like, where am I going, right? So the guy all of a sudden, so it was a taxi driver. The taxi driver was like shouting and doing like that, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop here. I don't even know where I am. So I panicked, obviously. I didn't know. I had obviously in my head already saying, that's it. This is it. Because I don't even know where I am. I don't know where they're taking me. It was in the middle of a field, by the way. And I'm like, that's it, my life. I mean, how am I even going to tell my parents that I am where I am? So taxi driver changed, and all of a sudden, I just stared there. I just stayed there, really. All of a sudden, I don't know how it happened, the taxi driver turns around and dropped me where it was supposed to basically drop me in the first place. I jump off the taxi, and that's it. So, literally, I did in my head a social construct, actually, about what was going to happen. I did in my head a social construct about the culture that I was in. Because, I mean, find yourself 25 years old in a taxi in the middle of a field. What do you think with somebody that you don't know? So I did that. So I think that, but what that did to me was a total judgment refinement about cultures. Because sometimes you think that you make assumptions about certain things that actually are not true. And actually, when I came back to the office the next day and told the colleagues, look what happened to me, I had to report it to security. They said, well, I think that, the taxi probably was trying to tell you that, that it probably was lost. You don't know. Might be a taxi driver that doesn't know the road, but you assume that the taxi driver knows the road. So you don't know what you don't know. So I think that moment in my career, what really made me was to really understand that sometimes we need to hold off judgment in so many ways when we interact with people that actually helped me a lot through my career in corporate, but also culturally and socially when I lived in, all of these countries. So this is a moment, though, that now the next moment that I was wanting to share with you is actually happened after Russia. So, it happens after Russia when I actually moved to the energy industry. and I moved to the black. So I moved to the oil and gas industry. I moved to a very unpopular industry sometimes, but full of really good thinking about how to really impact the planet. The issue is the process and the transition to it with with the heritage that is coming from. Now, I got to the industry. I moved from Russia to Brazil. So I lived in Rio de Janeiro for 5 years, and I was responsible for the entire Latin America. So from Venezuela, Mexico, all sorts of. And I was in an industry, but I had different lenses of how actually I was seeing some of this, right? So things that I had to go through was, so as an HR, you need to go and sometimes transition people out of the organization. And you had to hear, in Venezuela, when I went there, you had to hear, well, thanks God the company brought at least somebody nice and beautiful to do this, right? So things like that you hear, and you just need to, again, just take it, fight it, and but at the same time, you hear so many other good things, by the way, from other people. So I think it's really how from within you stay the course and you sort of influence in those little moments. And for me, staying in the oil and gas industry with different lenses as a woman, where I was 26, 27 years old at that time, and obviously you would look around yourself and you see one type of diversity, but then also, comments and things that you have to hear. But at the end of the day, you just need to sort of take it, look at that judgment that you're refining and sort of like thinking that there's always a balance as well, because in reality, it's not all as bad as it sounds when we look at some of these industries with the stereotypes. And this is from within, really. So look, this is what I had to do. So what I had to do in this career ladder is really I learned how to digest things. Instead of reacting, instead of blowing it up, instead of creating a massive, I had to digest it, and I had to learn how to digest my environment sometimes, and then how to go about it in a different way. So these are things that when you really look at environments like the energy industry or the oil and gas industry, where perhaps they are highly stereotyped around what type of diversity, I think that at the end of the day, it's all about how do we change it from within and how do you digest some of these things. And it helped me actually as well from a personal point of view on how to articulate sometimes things that I was not, that I was seeing in a different perspective. Here we go. Fast forward 2020, I became a mom. So another very defining moment. So pandemic, baby. But what happened here? So a very proud moment for myself. What happened here? This is my little Hugo. What happened here is that I go to the supermarket and, are you the nanny? We don't look alike, right? So blonde, blue eyes, pale. When people look at us, it's like, how the hell that happened? I mean, what's going on? And then all sorts of it's adopted. Or, no, it's, are you? So I have to hear all of that, even on one of the most defining moments of your life as a mother. And it's all because that stereotype. I have to hear sometimes you go to the GP practice, oh no, sorry, parents only. Hold on a minute. I'm her mother. I'm his mother, sorry. So even in a defining moment like that, it's little stereotypes that we do on a normal basis without it. And it's constantly fighting that stereotype. And it's constantly sort of going through what it takes, to in a way show up in the world in a different picture or a scheme that doesn't quite go. But those are the things that you become a mother is one of the very most defining moments probably that some of you says, but you continue even fight the stereotype. So this is another one more recently, and obviously very, very, very important in this moment in time. So at the end of the day, look, resilience. So you think and go through it and say, okay, what is the common denominator? Is that resilience that sort of goes through every single step in those defining moments that you're like, okay, digest it, refine your judgment, push the boundaries, fight the stereotype, move on. There's always something at the end that you need to, that is the bigger prize. So it's that recovering constantly, that no matter what you do it in different spheres of your life, if it is your family, if it is yourself, if it is your work, if it is your culture, you sort of have to go through and recovering from that resilience. However, when you actually go to some of the studies and they basically go and say, what are the key differentiators? What resilience is about? Self-awareness, realistic, keep calm under stress, empathetic, self-control, motivated, optimistic. And I'm like, really? I mean, actually, it felt more like all of this. It looks like more like I was disappointed. I was in huge disbelief. I was lonely. I self-doubted myself. I was in despair. And I actually had fear as well in the journey. So is this sometimes this conception where we say, well, women are very resilient. Yeah, but let's just be honest. I mean, this happens at the same time. So how do we deal with all of this, right? We like to put a tag on how do we feel, but in reality, day to day, when you're alone at home in your sofa, is this what comes in, on a daily basis. So that's what I was, at the end of the day, when you really go through it, it actually helps you, that digesting some of these things helps you to actually come out and yes, recovering that self to come back again. At the end of the day, look, it's that balance of we are in the middle of huge forces that comes right, left, and center. So, and sometimes, yeah, we're fragile. We're like eggshells. So how do we really take all of that and really go through those forces that in a daily basis? But at the end of the day, when you keep yourself in that balance, you are able to overcome most of those right, left, and centers hits that you get on a daily basis. So here's another moment that I kind of created. Reason why, Bayer is now sort of my next career home. And I joined Bayer 4 months ago. So I was in the energy industry, as I've mentioned, as a woman in energy, huge career, purpose. Everybody was like, well, yeah, you're the next in the energy industry. Keep here, very few women, keep fighting and all of that. And something kind of didn't sit well with me. 2020, so I could have easily decided to stay, have a career, and sort of be that differentiator among the crowd. Now, something happens in 2020 that actually created this double balance of like me defining the moment and the moment defining me. So 2020, my mom, suffering from cancer, got COVID, died. So here I am, right? And I'm like, okay. And she died, by the way, 3 months before my son was born. So here you go. You go and it's like, okay, well, look, this is a defining moment. What do you do about it? And then I thought, you know what? If I have still in front of me 20 years of career, I want to do it in a place where I can actually have a purpose and I can put myself into putting the right people in the right place, in the right job to deliver and to create life and to basically deliver science for a better life. Right? So I sort of decided that, look, it's a moment that defines you, but at the same time, it's a moment that you create yourself. So I dropped all of the benefits that could have given me to continue in an energy career and being, right, and everything's really comfortable, like people saying, why did you leave that world? I mean, you're the one among, so you're there. I decided to do it, and I decided to create that moment and join Bayer. For 2 reasons. One is obviously career-wise was something that it would help me for a bigger purpose. and to help people. But for another, it's like, well, if with what I do, with what I've done in my life, with all my whole self, I put myself at the purpose, at the service of this industry, which is life science. Hopefully, I can build the right talent to work on curing cancer and curing other illnesses. So that's sort of where, as well, Bayer sort of came into place, and I joined Bayer. And what I'm trying to do with Bayer is at the same time building what's the next talent strategy for the company, but also the inclusion and diversity that we all need to basically as well thrive for in scientific careers, because it is an important part as well for the STEM and other parts of careers. So our vision is science for a better life, and our purpose is health for all and hunger for all. So it really resonated with me from the get-go, and join this combined effort. So I'm just going to basically share with you what are we doing a little bit on inclusion and diversity.
We're visionaries, driven to solve the world's toughest challenges and striving for a world where health for all, hunger for none, is no longer a dream, but a real possibility. We're doing it with energy, curiosity, and sheer dedication, always learning from unique perspectives of those around us, expanding our thinking, growing our capabilities, and redefining impossible. There are so many reasons to join us, but if you're hungry to build a varied and meaningful career in a community of brilliant and diverse minds to make a meaningful difference, there's only one choice. Be you. Be Bayer.
So this is actually the part of our employee value proposition from a diversity perspective, which is as simple as be you. You don't need to be anybody else but you, with your whole self, with everything that you have around your diversity aspects of it. Whatever it is, just be you. And this is sort of like a very, very powerful to really explain very easily what do we believe, which is that diversity in any shape or form and dimension, just by embodying it in being yourself and bringing your best self. So we basically ended up bringing this to the next level, like with be part of something bigger. So we actually take it to that next level of like joining that curiosity and bringing something together, be part of the solution. And at the end of the day, it's that whole piece of being better together, because it is what at the end of the day brings it on. And all of the journey that I've gone through, I couldn't have done it by myself. So I've done it together with many friends and colleagues and people around the world that have accompanied me throughout this amazing journey. And I think that is self-explanatory why, in a way, being together is sort of what really brings the best out of everyone. So thanks very much, and hope that you enjoy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take that. Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I know.
Wardrobe malfunction, I think that's called.
Yes, I know.
Okay, thank you, Beatriz. Now, are there any questions? Yes, we'll take the lady at the front first, yes.
Your strategy of Be You, I think it resonates with all the people that have spoken already and said that I think it's easier for women to bring their whole selves to work. It's as much like this jungle, everything is intertwined, and men and women's brains work differently. And I've left a large corporate and they want you to take your whole self to work. I don't think a lot of the men can. Sorry, Scott.
Yeah.
They enter the work box.
Yes.
And whereas women, you take me and my family and everything that comes with me to work.
Exactly. And I think that was the trick of what the team the vision of this campaign, which is sometimes we go and say to diverse people that be different, be this, be that, be something else, be the opposite, right? And it just doesn't work. At the end of the day, it's about just be yourself. And I think that when you really look at from an HR perspective, I think there's a huge shift from a human resources and sort of talent strategy perspective. In the past, we used to sort of like hire people based on cultural fit to that organization, whatever it is. And obviously, I was before in a different organization. The future is not about fitting you with a certain culture. The future is just be you, be yourself, bring yourself. And we'd all figure it out, because at the end of the day, the culture is so diverse that you cannot put any framework anymore into anything. So it was super ingenious, because at the same time you can actually then link it with a future forward vision. So be part of something, be you, and be part of something too. So that's a bit of the spin of like diversity, trying to change diversity in the corporate world by being the opposite of what you see. And I just think that we've been 10 or 15 years sort of trying to mold that, and I'm not sure that it's working. So I think for us is really that next level of just bring yourself whole, and we figured it out.
Okay, and there was a question in the second row as well.
So I'm from the not-for-profit Motherboard. We're trying to get more women into tech, specifically mothers. What do you think needs to change for mothers in all industries, especially STEM, where there's not that many women? There's a huge, drop off at about the age 35.
Yeah, so it's very interesting, because there is a lot of bias in our life cycle processes from a talent perspective that we have not solved out, and they are not really conscious. They are really part of the system for many, many years. So I think the strategy around how do we support those families and those women coming back to the world, and I've experienced that myself very recently with the network, but also how do we go, as a companies, how do we go beyond just yourself at work? That's what I think the trigger is. Because when we all come back after maternity to work, we all actually want to, I wanted to come back. I'm desperate to come back. I'm career driven. I cannot do, I like the intellectual challenge of it. But my life at home was a mess. So in a way, I think that life integration with work, we as companies, we should be thinking more about how do we solve as well for some of the challenges that those women are having at work, at home, when they are sort of showing up at work. But that is difficult, because obviously there's different perspectives and contexts, but there are different things that we can put in place, and we are, to be honest, trying to figure it out. But the trick for me is not so much about what do you do when you are at work, because we do have job sharing, part-times, you try to, selection processes when you do recruitment, to debias that, succession planning, you debias that, promotions, you debias that. So we have the mechanisms in place, but it is the world that is not in the office that is really pressuring you. So I think that is for me the next level on how to encourage that sort of flow of coming back.
And yes, another quick question there, please.
So my question isn't so much about let's say like a life cycle, but my question is about sleep cycle. And more so, would you say that it is possible to bring the chronotype of you as part of you to work? Or is that something that is not accepted as part of you?
Well, I think it's a very interesting. If I stick to the belief, you bring yourself in with whatever you are, and I think that it's probably not. We're not used to that sort of type of environment, and I think that this is the challenge. That when we say be you, bring yourself, we don't know how many parts of yourself are showing up, because we just know sometimes 1 or 2 or 3 parts, right? So there's many aspects of yourself, and we have not still figured it out, the impact of truly bringing yourself with so many different aspects. So I don't think that we've figured it out, that particular challenge, but I think that the moment that we start sort of bringing this, and we actually put this together, it has not been for years. It has been like quite recently. So in a way, what we're trying to discover is what are the impacts of bringing yourself, and how do you basically articulate that, and with all of the forms, how do you shape that? So I don't think we figured it out, all the different parts just yet. But the belief is, if it's part of you, it's you.
Okay, just 1 minute. Just a question from the back row, please.
Yeah, just a quick one on the back of all of that. Do you have anything in place around the menopause for women?
We do have some policies in certain countries where it would allow. So a buyer that actually were forming some of these things where I was coming from, and again, I've just joined buyer recently, but where I was coming before, we did have some innovative things where, a time off and some other mechanisms to support some of the women that are going through some of those challenges. But I would say it's not extensively, and it requires a lot of work on the ground.
Okay, we'll leave it there for now because Beatriz is going to join us again for a panel very shortly, actually. So thank you for now, Beatriz.
Thank you.
Thank you.